Yeehaw! Howdy, partners. After an explosive opening round around Melbourne, I'm gonna try to keep the upward momentum. This week's racetrack for PSGL, Cota, Texas. Historically, it is one of my worst tracks. But being as stubborn as I am, I'm gonna keep practicing and practicing until it becomes one of my best. A strong quality performance, plagued by a bunch of question marks going into the race when it comes to the right strategy call. Will I be able to make the right calls and bring home a good result? Keep watching. Going into qualifying, it is going to be a tough session. Texas is such a technical track, and there's so many creative ways that you can invalidate your lap with. And at the end of my first push lap, I set a pretty good banker. It is going to be a 130.9 with a lot of potential for improvement. And improve we did. On to the second push lap. It is going to be a 2/10 improvement. And the question is whether I can bring that all the way to the line without invalidating. And I do. Across the line, it's going to be a 130.7. But I knew that I had more pace in me. That's why on the third and final lap, after going over some of my mistakes with my race engineer, I head out once again on track, striving for better. Into turn 1, aim for the black box to the right, cut the inside curve, but not too much as to not invalidate. Get back on the throttle early. Run over the inside curve to minimize distance. Now into the S's. So many ways that you can invalidate here. Keep it neat, keep it tidy, smooth on the steering. Try to take it flat, little left here. Tiny tap on the brake to induce rotation towards the right, and then swing it to the left. Be brave on throttle, but do not invalidate, especially on that corner exit. As we approach the back straight, brake right before the 50-meter board. Again, try to cut as much as you can without invalidating. Get straight line the car and get back on the throttle as soon as you can. Blast the battery, take it all the way down to 20%, but leave some in the tank as to not lose too much horsepower down the straight. Brake right before the 100-meter board, bleed off the brakes, cut as much as you can over the curve once again to gain time. Small trail braking, release right as you hit the curb. Feather the throttle, try to get back on the gas as soon as you can. Brake and turn in as soon as the curve on the right side starts, as to carry as much speed as you can through that complex. Keep it clean, there's only 2 corners left to go. Onto the fast left-hander where Lewis Hamilton lost it in the race. Aim for the black box, turn in, be brave! Little hesitation, but it still managed to gain time. Again, black box has the braking reference. Get back on the gas, blast the battery up to the line, and it's going to be pole position. Okay. Look at how happy I am in the replay. Look at him. Before we head into the race, I just want to say thank you for watching, because without you, none of this would be possible. And that's why I have put together a neat Discord server for special viewers like you. The link is in the description. Go check it out. And I can't wait to see you part of the community. Going into the race, I was absolutely flabbergasted. The weather was very, very wet. We made some last-minute changes to the setup, and I have 0 wet practice under the belt going into it. But it's gonna be 5 lights, and away we go. Off the line, traction is very, very poor. Wheel spin the entire time all the way up to turn 1. I'm gonna try to leave some space on the inside, but once I see that it's clear, I'm gonna go for the apex and try to create as much distance between myself and the pack as possible. And there's one other thing I'm gonna get to right away, and that is to push flat out in these opening laps, just to get a feel of things, see where the limit of grip is, and play around, see how the car behaves in the wet, because I need to get used to the setup as fast as I can and start managing my tires. Into the third sector, the 2 cars behind me are going side by side through almost every corner. So that's gonna give me some breathing room and room for error as I keep playing around with the limit of grip to see where the new braking references are and how much speed I can carry through the corners, and I get my first track limit warning. Remember, if I get 2 more, it is going to be a 3-second penalty. So I have to stay clean because we still got 27 laps to go. Pass behind me, Alfie, after having dispatched the Aston Martin, it is making progress really fast, and he's showing really, really rapid pace. But considering the current weather conditions, I'm not that stressed, nor do I feel threatened, because I just have to blast the battery down the straight and go defensive, and he can never get past. Now, even as early as lap 2, I had to start thinking about the strategy. The track is going to dry up at some point in the future, and we're gonna have to go to intermediates. But when do we go to intermediates? And is it going to be a 1-stop, 2-stop,
Do we try to go to the end on a single set of intermediates? It is going to be a very tricky question to answer. For now though, I gotta focus on keeping Alfie behind me and not let him get past. Skipping on to lap 3. I have to go defensive into turn 1 because he is being very aggressive on his tires and battery. He's trying to look for an opening, but it's just so difficult to overtake in the wet. And this goes on for quite a while, until lap 7, where you can see that Alfie is starting to drop back a little. He's sliding a little bit more, he's being more cautious. And I've just been managing this entire time, nursing the tires, because I know that I might have to go long if my race engineer asks me to. But if you take a look at the track, there is an intermediate line that is starting to appear. Now, you might be tempted to jump onto the intermediates right away, but we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna try to go long today. Jump into lap 10. The McLaren is the first one to dive into the pits for the intermediates. The Haas is the second one to dive into the pits, but I'm not gonna let that distract me from my own goal. I'm gonna go long, and there's a reason why. If I go onto the intermediates now, yes, it might be faster, but I might have to pit again before the end of the race, which is going to add another 20 seconds that I'm gonna spend in the pits. That's gonna add to my total race time. Just a couple of laps later, everybody is on the intermediates, and I'm the only wet runner still going around. I'm losing a lot of time to the intermediates, and I have to admit, at this point, I was getting a little stressed, but it's too late to back out now. We have to commit to the plan. The 2 cars that were behind us have already managed to catch up to us. They've made up a whole pit stop distance within just a couple of laps, which goes to show how slow the wets are in the wrong conditions. And you'll see in a second, the 2 cars just have so much more grip compared to my wets. Granted, I'm on really old tires, but it's just no match, and I'm not gonna fight them. Just let them go here and continue on with my own race. However, these 2 cars are already on 30% tire wear, even though they just pitted like 4 or 5 laps ago. So that's on average 6% every lap. If you do the math yourself, they're not gonna make it to the end. If they keep this up, they're gonna puncture 7 or 8 laps from now. And on lap 16 is when I decide to come in. Going on to the intermediates, our pace now is going to be tested. So even though they passed me, they have to box again. So the question is, can they make up another 20 seconds before the end of the race? Because these tires that I just put on will allow me to go to the end. It is going to be tight, we did the math, but it is going to be possible to go to the end. This does mean, however, that I'm going to come out in P13 right behind my teammate. And at this point, the track is just not that wet anymore, but being on the fresh intermediates just gives me so much more grip compared to all the other drivers around me. I'm getting on corner entry, turn in, mid corner, on corner exit, everywhere. You're just gaining so much time, and I cannot afford to waste a single second behind my teammate, so I'm gonna go straight on the attack, burning everything. I do not want to be stuck behind him, going into the heavy traction zones, and the overspeed from the overtake and the slipstream allowed me to pass him pretty easily. Just a lap later, I've already created a 2-second gap to my teammate behind, and it's gonna be the same story to the Alpine car in front of me. I'm going to gain so much time in the traction zones. It's just uncomparable. And going into the final corner, it is crazy how much later I can brake, how much turn-in I have compared to him, and wasting no time. Again, going on the attack, going down the inside, and even though I'm not even fully alongside, I can brake a lot later, and I use that to my advantage to make a move stick. Lap 19 now, just a sector later, there's Red Bull and Kit Car fighting each other very, very hard going into the S's. That's going to help me make up ground compared to them. And I cannot afford to waste a single second behind these guys. So I'm going to have to be very, very aggressive. Elbows fully out. Going into turn 12, I just gained like 5/10 just based on the turn-in alone. I'm going to go down the inside right away. He turns in even though I'm fully alongside, and he's not going to be happy, and in a second he's going to go for a really crazy move here, but he only spins himself out in the process. I'm up to P10 now. Just a lap later, going into lap 20, I'm right on the gearbox of the Red Bull at the end of the S's. Just shows you how much more pace we have currently on the fresh intermediates. But my intermediates are not going to last long either, because the track is getting drier and drier. The wear is only going to increase as we move closer to slick conditions. We're now at a weird place where the track is not wet enough for intermediates, but it's also not dry enough for slicks. Again, I make quick work of the Red Bull because they know it's just not in their best interest to fight me. My tires are just so much faster still. It's only going to cost them race time if they decide to fight me. Skipping on to lap 21 now, I'm making steady progress, slowly but steadily crawling my way back up. And you can see that the leaders, they're already on the back straight. They're like a full sector ahead at this point. But I'm not worried because they still have to pit and I don't. And they're gonna have to make up more than 20 seconds if they want to catch back up to me. And at the end of the same lap, the McLaren in front of me has to pit because they're approaching puncture territory. And the McLaren has to dive into the pits because they will not make it to the end. And anybody who tries to do it will get heavily punished. 6 racing laps to going into the first sector. Yellow flags are out because in a second, we're gonna drive past a very ailing McLaren. He's going very, very slow. And ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you the race leader. Driving around with only 3 wheels, the 4th one punctured. Going on to lap 24 now. I'm actually in a net P2 right now, but I cannot afford to stay behind them. So I'm gonna go for a very daring overtake, tuck into both of their slipstreams, and hope for the best. We're both gaining very, very fast to the first car in the train, but the second car, also having had the slipstream, he's gonna have a lot of overspeed going into turn 12. Who's gonna be the bravest on the brakes? I am, because I have the superior tire strategy. Easy peasy, no sweat, 1 stone, 2 F1 cars. However, going to the end of lap 24, it stopped raining, and the track looks bone dry. At this point, the track was too dry for intermediates, but we gotta ask ourselves this very philosophical question. Is it worth it to dive into the pits with 3.5 racing laps to go? Not really, because then you still have to make up more than 20 seconds of race time before the end of the race. But hold that thought, because going into the S's, the leader has gone off. He's had a puncture, and he's out, and I move up to P1. Back to the topic at hand. You can see on the track that there's still a light sheen on the surface of the track. So it's not completely dry yet. So anybody who tries their luck and goes onto the slicks is going to have a really bad time. And I decide to stay out. But it is going to be a very difficult trip all the way to the end. Texas being a very harsh track on the tires already, it is going to make it very, very difficult to make it all the way to the end and stay out of puncture. But I'm going to try my best. And I have to find a perfect compromise between management and raw pace. Because the Williams car behind us is on fresh intermediates, and he's making up a lot of ground very, very fast. But he was on the 2-stop strategy, and according to my engineer, he was on the same tire wear that we were at the end of the race, which is very, very odd. Out of the S's for a second to last time today, the Williams car is still gaining little by little every corner, but I think I have big enough of a margin for me to play with so I can bring home the win. Going into the 3rd and final sector one last time today, it is a 1.6 second gap between me and P2, and I'm going to take it pretty safe here. No need to slide around, no need to take any unnecessary risks. Just bring it home and manage the car all the way to the line. You can see the rear wanting to step away, and through the final corner one last time. Up to the checker flag. Baby. It is going to be P1.
And with that, I'm currently sitting in P1 in the driver's standings, and it is looking pretty good so far. Now, if you don't want to miss out on any of my next upcoming PSGL races, make sure you subscribe. Next week's track is going to be Belgium. Historically, one of my strongest tracks. Let's see if we can keep this upward momentum going into the 3rd round of the season. In the meantime, this is Kai signing off, and I'll see you very soon. Stay safe, and bye-bye.